Thank you for turning to page 121. Today we're going to jump into the Greyhawk Adventures from the Ashes box set from '92, and we're going to look at a specific area. The area we're going to look at is the Cairn Hills. The Cairn Hills are depicted. This is the Greyhawk map that comes with that box set. This is the Domains of Greyhawk map. So it's dialed in much tighter as to where everything is and what Greyhawk controls. And I'm going to show you the city itself. Greyhawk City sits right over here. So Greyhawk City is right there, and the Cairn Hills are all around it. The Cairn Hills come up and around, and then they come down here and go into and become the Aberalls. So up here you have the Cairn Hills. So what's the big deal about the Cairn Hills? Who cares? Well, I do. Cairn Hills are quite important in D&D because they are right there by the castle. You get the opportunity. There's Greyhawk City itself, and Greyhawk Castle, of course, was a big part of the earliest campaign in Gary Gygax's campaign, simply because people would go in, plunder the castle of its riches, bring them back to the city thrived. Well, before the castle did that, the Cairn Hills did that. They drew adventurers who would go exploring and check out all the cairns that are in these hills and plunder them. A cairn is any kind of burial place, usually just a stack of rocks, but they can be a little bit more elaborate. Usually not much, but in this sense, the Cairn Hills were burial vaults where the players could go in and explore and basically grave rob and fight the undead that might be lurking there, the evil creatures that live in the area, that kind of thing. That's what the Cairn Hills were for. And that's how I used them in my campaign. I started my great campaign in January of '82 in Greyhawk. I've been playing since '80, but my Greyhawk campaign started in January of '82. And one of the earliest places we went from the Free City was up into the Cairn Hills. There's just so much stuff to have fun with up there. We get a nice breakdown from this box set about the Cairn Hills themselves. According to this, after the Greyhawk Wars, the Free City of Greyhawk has more control over the Cairn Hills than they did before. I leave that kind of loose. I mean, they of course control the immediate area here, but over to the east and a little bit to the south, I don't let Greyhawk control that much. They're generally regarded as the northern spur of the Aberalls Mountains, stretching north to the Neardiv, and their character becomes increasingly different from the Aberalls the further north one travels, becoming less sharply undulating and lower. The hills are granite and contain large quartz deposits with important resources, although the surface soil is usually shallow and of poor fertility. So it's not a great place to grow things. You're not going to get a lot of people who are going to be farming in this area, although there are some. And the description goes on to tell us that there are a bunch of different graves in this area. That's what gave the Cairn Hills their name. And before Castle Greyhawk was explored successfully and all the riches were brought there, players were attracted to this area by the Cairn Hills, by the burial vaults, and the riches said to be found therein. Once word of those got out, adventurers flocked and ransacked every cairn that they could. Most cairns have been sacked by this point. They've been emptied, but new monsters have moved into old cairns and brought their own treasure. Or there's always the ever-famous undiscovered cairn. I've had a lot of fun with that over the years if I'm in the mood for just a good old-fashioned dungeon crawl. It's a pretty fair bet that my players are going to be starting in Greyhawk City and going to be heading into the Cairn Hills and doing their work in there. This is where dungeons are born. You have corridors, you have doors, you have burial chambers, you have monsters lurking within. That's what the Cairn Hills are all about to me. They scream D&D to me, and it's just, the Cairn Hills are just a great place to adventure, and I've been using them forever. I'm going to show up the map a little bit more to show how extensive the Cairn Hills are once you go a little further south. So Greyhawk is still here. You come down here, and then they become the Aberalls. So the Cairn Hills cover a great deal of ground. Each hex on this scale map is 6 miles. So the Cairn Hills are quite extensive and quite close to the city of Greyhawk. They're right across the Selentan River at the northernmost point. So they're right there. And then, of course, it's more settled the closer you are to the city, and more wild the further away you get. You get such things as the Doom Grinder, which I'll visit in a future video. Mauer Castle, which I've already touched on a little bit in Mordekainen's Fantastic Adventure. but I'll touch on Mortimer Castle a little bit more in a future video. Graysmere, Elmshire is up here. You get all kinds of places. Tensor's Tower is along the Nerdiv right there in the Cairn Hills. So there's all kinds of adventuring, all kinds of good stuff to have. And if you want to go back to an old school flavor of D&D and kind of visit where it all began, this is a great place to start. I primarily run my campaigns out of Furiandi and the City of Greyhawk. So I have used this area of Greyhawk tremendously, especially down the high road along the Sullentan River, going down to Woolly Bay, down to Hardby. I've had individual adventures and campaigns happen all along that route, and I have done it for years. In fact, we have a player character's stronghold is built right across from Twoford, right there. So it's an old place for us to play. The Cairn Hills are a great little place to play around. You've got the Mist Marsh right here with the Mist Lake, the Plain of Greyhawk itself, the Arbor Alls, the Bright Desert down here where Rary may or may not be holding court. I'll move the map up a little bit. There you go. There's the Bright Desert. All kinds of adventures to be had right in this area, which is, of course, why it was drawn up the way it was drawn up and why it's kind of the early go of D&D. This is where a lot of the early Greyhawk stuff took place. And Mars, of course. Yes, they adventured on Mars, courtesy of Gygax Lake and the John Carter of Mars books by Edgar Rice Burroughs. But the Free City itself is a great base for your player characters. I've done entire games where the players were just in the city. I've even done one campaign where the players never left the city. They went from level 1 to about level 8 and never went outside the city. Everything was contained within Greyhawk City. That was a fun campaign. That went on, I did that for over a year. But then we have, once you get out of the city and you want to get into some scary areas, you've got the Cairn Hills right there, right at your doorstep, and you can go ahead and start plundering and bring that treasure back to Greyhawk and helping grow the local economy. So there you have it. That's a real quick look at the Cairn Hills and their place in a lot of Greyhawk campaigns, and certainly in mine. And it's easy to run an entire campaign based on nothing but what's depicted on this map. There are so many places you could go and things you could do. You could easily run a campaign of characters from brand new to, 15th, 16th level easily on this map. By the way, I know I'm dating myself when I say 15th, 16th level, not 20th. We don't have a ton of 20th or higher level characters. We have a handful. We have some that have been around since the early 80s, but we don't have a bunch of those. Most of our characters are somewhere in the teens, the older guys. But there you have it. That's just a quick look at the Cairn Hills and the domains of Greyhawk. Let me know what you think. If there's some adventures you've done in the Cairn Hills that are pretty exciting. It's a fun place to adventure. That's it. That's all I got for today on page 121. Thanks for watching. I want to thank you for your time. Please subscribe if you haven't. Like the video if you liked it. And tell your friends. Take a look at the Patreon. See if you can help me out there. And I'll see you next time on page 121.